r/AskReddit by Redmond ETS. Jurors of Reddit, what is the wildest story you have sitting on a trial? Not me, but my dad was on a jury for a murder trial back in the 80s. He told me most of the jury members felt like the guy did it, but the prosecution did a bad job of presenting the evidence, so they had to acquit him. 6 months later, he killed someone else and was convicted for good. A woman had an infection in her finger. Went to urgent care. Doctor prescribed some drugs, told the woman to soak it in warm water. If it didn't get better the next day, go to the ER. Woman does not get script filled and soaks her finger in her condo's community hot tub. Infection worsened. Her husband dragged her to the ER a few days later. They pumped her full of drugs but couldn't stave off amputation. She tried suing the urgent care for not giving her more explicit instructions, not telling her how severe an infection could be, and not forcing her to go the ER that night. Was put in a jury for a murder one case. Defendant was guilty as fudge. There was a bar fight. Defendant left the scene, grabbed a gun, and came back for round 2. Bar patrons saw him there. He had priors for assault and theft, and people who knew him basically said that he was a wannabe thug. Then the dumb fudge bragged about it in the holding cell, and the other inmates testified against him. All the while, his lawyer was just insulting the witnesses to discredit them, including a forensic evidence specialist for the police, and banging on about how there was no DNA evidence from random cigarette butts outside a bar. We deliberated for under 10 minutes, took an anonymous vote, and wound up with a unanimous guilty. It took longer for the bailiff to come get us than it did for us to decide. I sat on a jury about 15 years ago. The ADA was trying her first ever case, solo. The defendant was pro se. During deliberations, we as the jury were in complete admiration of the judge and how well he handled what could have been a shit show of a trial. Rephrasing questions to witnesses, handling and explaining objections, and keeping the trial free of meandering or grandstanding. My wife was on a DUI jury, where the police cam showed the whole thing. It was the road my parents live on, and one she's driven probably 1,000 times. It's a very straight road. He was weaving all over the place, and when he got to his driveway a block from my folks, he claimed that he got home okay, so there was no case. There was, in fact, a case. Was a case in Compton, California. 3 men were on trial for armed robbery. Multiple counts for each. Not fun. Several jury members were convinced that the cops were corrupt, and they weren't going to send kids from the neighborhood to prison. After a week of deliberation, and multiple reviews of the videotapes of the liquor store, we ended up convicting on several counts, but not all. It's not easy taking away someone's liberty, even if they deserve it. We all had some pretty intense discussion and debates. I was on a jury for a custody hearing for a foster parent that was accused of sexually abusing 3 young foster girls. Had to sit through 3 days of horrible testimony outlining everything this guy did to them, only to have the defendant settle, that is give up custody, as soon as we were sent to deliberations. Judge told us afterward that it was a common tactic used by the defense to get a sneak peek of the evidence against him for the upcoming criminal trial. Not sure if that qualifies as wild, but it sure sucked to not be able to officially vote against that bastard after sitting through all of that. We were sitting in the holding room getting our initial instruction. The following exchange takes place. Potential juror: my daughter is downstairs getting arraigned. Does that mean I get to go home? Bailiff: if you enter the courtroom and your daughter is seated at the defense table, tell us. Until then you're stuck here. I was on a jury for a trial that lasted 6 weeks. The defendant was a near 70-year-old man, and he was on trial for 16 counts of recording without consent. What he was recording was his encounters with multiple escorts he brought to his house. For 6 weeks, we had to watch videos of an old man banging prostitutes. Some weird ass dude drove 50 miles with a loaded gun, texting his ex 100 times that he was gonna kill her and her new boyfriend. Dumbass drives to the wrong house on the right street, and cops wrapped him up right away. Suddenly he wasn't gonna do nothing. It was pathetic, to be honest. Nobody wanted to be there. His ex didn't even want him to get in trouble. They all just wanted to move on. Weirdest part of all, I kinda enjoyed jury duty. Criminal trial. Prosecutor never should have brought it to trial. We felt the police lied and the only reliable witness was the drug dealer they brought in from prison to testify on behalf of the defendant. So came back with not guilty. We asked the judge afterwards why it was even brought to trial. She said she had no idea and that she wasn't part of the pre-trial where some evidence may have been excluded. Basically, the prosecutor tried to pin drug possession charges on someone who happened to be in the apartment of a known drug dealer when the police raid happened. Drug dealer ran to the bathroom where the defendant was in to flush drugs. Drug dealer slammed the bathroom door and locked it. Police kicked open the bathroom door, grabbed drug dealer, and in the scuffle the bathroom door shuts again, leaving the defendant alone in the bathroom, confused and afraid to leave bathroom until the police open the door again and pull them out. So prosecutor tries to say that this is worth saying defendant was in control of the drugs and was trying to destroy evidence during those brief moments of the door being shut. Drug dealer testifies that he pushed his way into the bathroom, interrupting the defendant as they were using it, startling them and scaring them. Drug dealer also states only they handled the drugs and attempted to flush them. Police were inconsistent with their testimony, couldn't testify that defendant had any prior convictions for drug dealing, etc. Now we as a jury believe the defendant was there to service the drug dealer and his girlfriend in exchange for drugs. That is all. There were toys all over the apartment in the crime scene photos. But the prosecutor didn't charge them with that. In fact, most felt empathy as we could see the defendant was struggling, as during the trial they had a difficult time staying engaged and you could see that they had lived some hardships. I was a juror on a coroner's inquest for an officer-involved fatality. The officer had been responding to a call about a hold-up at a casino, so was driving lights and sirens. Lights for sure, maybe sirens. Down a through street at 2 a.m.ish. A cyclist came out of an alley right in front of him. Officer hit and killed the cyclist. Turns out, the guy on the bike was the guy who had just committed the robbery. We had to determine whether the officer had broken any rules or acted maliciously. It was pretty clear the whole thing was a tragic accident. The officer felt terrible. The family of the victim was there, and it was hard for them. Just kind of a sad situation all the way around. It was also very educational. I wouldn't mind doing jury duty again. It was wild to me, but mostly just sad. I sat on a grand jury, so we did a lot of cases over the course of a month. The worst one was a 12-year-old who had been essayed by her 19-year-old cousin. The offender admitted the assault in a written statement. The poor child testified. The wild part was one of the other jurors, who made it very clear she was a church lady, refused to vote to prosecute statutory rape because she thought the little girl was a slut who probably seduced him. There was a lot of arguing with her, and at one point the DA, in a moment of clear exasperation on why such a clear-cut case was taking so long, asked if we wanted to have her testify again. Thankfully everyone but church cunt shouted no at that suggestion, and it got through everyone else's head that we didn't need church cunt's vote to prosecute the child's rapist, as the vast majority overruled her. We only needed quorum. It's been over a decade and I'm still angry with that woman, and I hope that baby girl got justice in the end. A lot of sympathy for DAs dealing with brand new grand juries too. At the start of the hearings everyone gets caught up in minutiae when almost all of the cases are extremely clear cut. Was one of last jurors to be dismissed. Assault trial. As I was walking to lunch during the break, I saw defendant assault another person on the street. I asked to see judge in chambers after they asked if anyone could not be impartial. I didn't want to say it in front of the other jurors. Defense attorney begged judge to keep me on the jury. No idea why. After explaining what I had just witnessed, judge asked me to try and out it out of my mind. I said defendant was guilty to their faces and they all asked me to stay on. San Francisco. I once sat on a jury for a child molestation case. Grandpa was on trial for molesting the granddaughter. He had previously served prison time for molesting his daughter, the child's mother. After he got out of prison, Grandma welcomed him home with open arms. The daughter moved back home with 4 kids after her divorce. Grandpa said he tripped in the dark and fell, and that's how his hand ended up in the child's vagina. Don't worry, we sent him back to prison, and even his own lawyer said it was unlikely he will ever get out. A guy came in wearing pants that had crunches on them and transformed into a chair. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.